Lionesses who lose their young enter estrus, rapidly opening the way for the new conquerors to pass on their genes without delay. Survival in these lands leaves no room whatsoever for compassion. To maintain order within the empire, the lion reaches for the most primitive instrument of power nature offers the roar. It is a sound that tears through the night, carrying up to 8 kilometers, shaking earth and sky alike. Within it lives a double message. The first, a declaration absolute and unmistakable: I am here, and I rule this pride. The second, a cold-blooded warning aimed at anyone who dares set a paw inside its territory. Yet the zebra never walks toward death without a fight. These mares are warriors in their own right, but their courage blooms only when they stand sheltered by the strength of their family. That family unit moves across the savannah under the command of a lead stallion commander and living shield rolled into one. The mares stay bound to one another for life, never abandoning each other, not in joy, not in tragedy. And the foals are the seeds of tomorrow. That bond is seared into existence through the ritual of social grooming. They lean on one another, tending each other's coats, as though recharging some spiritual reserve for a world that grants no respite. When death makes its move, the herd activates a defense protocol built in 3 distinct layers, not unlike a trained military unit deploying on command. Each of those layers marks a clear boundary between life and extinction. The moment the herd explodes into stampede, thousands of black and white stripes slash through the air, generating a disorienting optical illusion. This is known as the confusion effect. The lion's brain simply cannot lock on to a single individual. If the visual illusion fails, then pure discipline takes over. The plain zebra reforms into a diamond formation so tight it offers no gap for any predator pressing from the rear. The most exposed position in that formation belongs to the stallion. He becomes the final wall of flesh and bone, standing between the hunter and the rest of his family. He is willing to absorb devastating wounds if it means the others escape with their lives. The third layer of protection is an active surveillance system running around the clock. The plain zebra, in truth, never falls into a complete sleep. There is always a member of the herd standing watch, eyes wide open, ears raised, tracking every shadow that stirs in the dark. To counter the lion, the plain zebra turns to the most unlikely ally on the entire savannah, the ostrich. The senses of each species cover precisely the blind spot of the other, like two warriors forming a single, seamless defensive system. The ostrich, standing nearly 3 meters tall, functions as the savannah's highest biological watchtower. Its eyes, the largest of any land bird on Earth, detect movement at 3.5 kilometers, outreaching the visual range of any predator that hunts these plains. The zebra, for its part, contributes extraordinarily sharp hearing and smell. Together, the pairing is simply perfect. One species watches what is distant, while the other listens for what is near and tracks every scent on the air. Together they raise an alarm system with no gaps possible. This alliance works through niche partitioning, a natural ecological division that unfolds without conflict. The zebra grazes on tall grass, while the ostrich favors seeds and insects from the ground. Neither contests the other's food supply. Without a single word of shared language, both communicate in the universal tongue of survival panic. If the ostrich suddenly halts its feeding and stretches its neck toward the horizon, that signal fires like an instant alarm across the entire area. The lion is near. Yet not every herbivore chooses to turn its back on the king of the savannah. Among the big five, the African buffalo is the only creature that can plant its feet on the battlefield, look death square in the face, and force it to step back. But its true strength does not lie in the 900mm horns it carries across its skull. Its power rests in the most disciplined democratic society in the Wild Kingdom, a community where collective decision-making determines the survival of all. A flexible hierarchy governs here, a quiet leadership that imposes itself without violence. Dominant males control reproduction and direction, yet every migration decision falls to a vote from the herd. Whichever way the most heads turn, that becomes the direction chosen by all. The African buffalo's movement formation answers to a purely military logic. The center serves as a protected zone reserved for females and calves. The outer ring, by contrast, becomes a wall of steel bristling with the sharpened horns of the most powerful males. Nothing breaks through so long as the herd holds tight. The African buffalo does not follow its leaders like subjects bowing to a throne. When roughly half the herd swings toward the same point, that alone becomes a collective order. They obey not an individual, but the instinct shared by the majority. When the lion appears, the impala's impulse is to flee without looking back. The African buffalo's instinct, however, is to turn around and charge. If a member of the herd is seized by lions and cries out, hundreds of buffalo return instantly like an army driven by vengeance. The dominant males drive straight at the predator, swinging their horns through the air like weapons of war. Beyond the great herd, the savannah shelters fortresses far more enigmatic. The Dagger Boys are old males expelled from the main group. Wounds years, and the memory of ancient battles have forged them into creatures that have nothing left to lose. But the Brotherhood of the Dagger Boys is a legend that cannot be erased. When they lie down to sleep, they do so with their backs pressed against one another. Not a single vulnerable angle is left exposed. They remain ready to fight to their very last breath. Yet the African buffalo's solidarity carries a far darker face, a grudge forged in iron. It is the only documented herbivore that actively tracks down and ambushes those who once attacked it. The African buffalo holds an infernal memory and a resentment that never cools with the passage of time. If you strike a buffalo and fail to kill it, that does not mark the end of the encounter. It marks the beginning of a hunt in reverse. Hunting the African buffalo is not simply a meal for the lion, it is the ultimate test of survival. Each of these animals can tip the scales at 800 kilograms, carrying horns always ready to tear open a predator's belly at any given moment. The lion then deploys the most refined coordination tactic in the entire animal kingdom. The lionesses scatter in silence beneath the cover of darkness, encircling a portion of the herd and isolating their target with the patience of a seasoned professional hunter. With devastating shoulder force, the male lion drives directly into the buffalo's head, not to kill it outright, but to throw it off balance and bring it down. The impact of a 200-kilogram body hitting the ground carries a destructive force that nothing can resist. But the African buffalo is far from a willing victim. The moment it senses danger, the herd's chemical and vocal communication system activates instantly. Alarm calls and the scent of fear spread across the plain in seconds. If the herd arrives in time, the hunt is over on the spot. The African buffalo does not simply rescue its own. It flips the board, entirely turning the lion from hunter into prey in the blink of an eye. Lion versus African buffalo, who truly dominates the savannah? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Yet even when the lion manages to bring down the buffalo, the battle is not over. The scent of fresh blood travels 10 kilometers on the wind. Through the darkness, shadows accompanied by shrill, cackling laughter move swiftly toward the freshly laid feast. To challenge the lion, the spotted hyena needs the ultimate weapon numbers and collective will. These hunters gather in clans with a social structure so complex that science has had to coin its own term for its fission-fusion dynamics. They split apart and regroup with the fluidity of liquid in motion. Due to abnormally high levels of androgenic hormones from before birth, female spotted hyenas develop musculature aggression and a physiology that is markedly masculinized. They dominate males in any confrontation an evolutionary paradox that is deeply unsettling. Lion society is governed by raw physical strength. Spotted hyena society, by contrast, operates through inherited status. A cub born to a high-ranking mother automatically inherits its mother's social throne from the very moment of its birth. For the male spotted hyena, however, life is a genuine journey through social hell. Upon reaching maturity, he must leave his birth clan and start from zero in a completely unfamiliar community, like a nameless foot soldier with no record and no rank. These males become punching bags for the fury of the entire clan, receiving only the leftover bones once the feast is finished. Such cruelty is not sustained by hatred, but because the power system has been written directly into the species' DNA. A spotted hyena clan can number up to 100 members, yet they do not operate as a chaotic mob. They function through the fission-fusion mechanism, splitting into small groups to hunt, then regrouping as an imposing force when the moment comes to face the lion. Against their ancestral enemy, the spotted hyena deploys a classic siege tactic. It never attacks head-on. Instead, it presses from multiple flanks, harassing relentlessly until the lion exhausts itself and is forced to withdraw. A lone spotted hyena poses no threat to a lion, but a clan of 20 hyenas surrounding a solitary male changes the entire equation. That is the most chilling spectacle the savannah has to offer, the sovereign brought down by those it always held in contempt. The African wild dog reigns as the sovereign with a heart of steel. Its compact frame may deceive at first glance, but appearances here are dangerously misleading. These are the most efficient hunting machines on the entire savannah, with a success rate that reaches 80%. The secret of this species lies not in its fangs, nor in the raw power of its muscles. An African wild dog pack typically numbers between 10 and 40 individuals. Each one wears a coat pattern that is entirely its own, as though nature itself issued every animal a personal fingerprint. At the pinnacle of the hierarchy stands the alpha pair. They alone hold the right to reproduce a privilege that is rare in the wild kingdom. But this leadership is not imposed through violence. The alpha pair governs through earned trust and the accumulated sacrifice of every hunting season. The remaining members, the pack's uncles and aunts, willingly surrender their own right to breed, channeling all their energy into raising the next generation. This sacrifice is not a demand placed upon them. It is a voluntary choice, born from a society built on absolute trust. If a member is injured, grows old, or loses a limb, it is never left to face its fate alone. It is fed and protected by the entire pack, without exception. It is a natural social welfare system that admits no exceptions of any kind. Even at the moment of feeding, the African wild dog displays a compassion that is remarkable by any standard of the wild world. Those who arrive first at the kill chew the meat and regurgitate it for the others, including the elderly and those living with disability. Far from being a sign of weakness, this represents the most sustainable collective strength on the entire savannah. Drought strips the landscape of its green cover, leaving only scattered remnants of sustenance across the surface of the ground. Unlike those that feed only on what rises above the soil, the warthog pulls treasures from beneath the earth. The structure of its short neck, combined with powerful musculature, makes this work considerably easier. The warthog has developed thick calluses on the joints of its front legs. These animals spend hours on their knees, grazing on mineral-rich grass, or digging out succulent rhizomes from beneath the ground. Such sustained concentration demands a lowering of the guard, and predators do not miss it. The lioness moves with extreme caution, knowing full well that this target is far from easy prey. Through constant natural wear, the warthog's lower tusks are honed into razor-sharp instruments of defense. The queen of the savannah respects this weapon, though she tends to underestimate the startling agility of her quarry. Within its compact musculature, fast twitch muscle fibers generate a speed that reaches 48 kilometers per hour. The warthog shifts its center of gravity in an instant, throwing the predator's tracking system completely off in a fraction of a second. The Great Migration sweeps across the 30,000 square kilometers of the Serengeti Mara ecosystem. More than 2 million living creatures make an 800-kilometer journey. Driven by an ancient instinct, they chase the clouds in search of water and abundant grassland. The queens of the savannah have learned to read the exact rhythm of the migration, and they wait patient for the target to fall directly into the trap. The The zebra serves as an alert sentinel equipped with near 360-degree panoramic vision and highly flexible hearing. Added to this is a finely tuned sense of smell. Together, these senses allow the zebra to detect nearby threats and accelerate immediately to 65 kilometers per hour. The zebra's zigzag running tactic throws the predator's trajectory calculations into complete disarray. Yet the Mara River is a theater of such turbulence that it can paralyze even the sharpest senses. Lions tend to position themselves in ambush at strategic points rather than pursuing the herd in open chase. The lioness trusts that the weight of the moment and the crushing force of her jaw will soon settle the outcome of the encounter. What she has failed to account for is the will of a fighter with nowhere left to run. With a kick exceeding the equivalent of 1 ton of force, the zebra tears itself free from the most critical instant. It leaves the apex predator disoriented in a cloud of dust, staring at an ending it never once imagined. Faced with the repeated failures of the rest of the pride, the male lion adopts a bolder strategy, locking all his focus onto the wildebeest. In April, the savannah stirs beneath the frenzy of mating season, instincts surging to the surface across every stretch of the journey. The herd turns to the dilution effect as a shield, but the surging flow of life is forced to narrow at the bend of the Sand River. This terrain transforms the predator's nearly 200-kilogram frame into a series of devastating impacts. The overwhelming need to feed dominates every sense, and the lion rises as an unstoppable force against the wildebeest. The victor in this moment is the one willing to stake everything on a single decisive move of fate. But on the savannah, not every sovereign chooses the path of alliance. Some prefer the darkness and total silence, no companions, no packs, no possibility of calling for help. And sometimes it is precisely these that are the most feared on the entire battlefield. No allies with whom to share the risk, no rescue when danger closes in, completely alone. One territory, one rule, dominate or perish. Here, the solitary warriors write their legends through infinite patience and perfectly placed fangs. The leopard is the living embodiment of absolute silence. Each individual is a sovereign ruling an exclusive kingdom entirely its own. A male's territory forms a vast empire spanning between 10 and 100 square kilometers. This domain overlaps with the ranges of several females, but tolerates the presence of rival males under no circumstances whatsoever. To cross those invisible borders is an extreme risk for any intruder. To avoid unnecessary confrontation, leopards employ a system of hidden codes, deep claw marks carved into tree trunks, and distinctive scents deposited along low vegetation. Yet the most striking element resonates from the darkness, the sound of wood being sawed, a rough rhythmic rasp that tears through the night and serves as a severe warning to any rival within earshot. Solitude is the price paid for becoming the ultimate ambush predator. Packs are loud and easily detected from a distance. Ghosts, by contrast, are invisible to any eye. This is how the leopard closes on its prey to a critical distance under 5 meters. Solitude allows it to melt into the dappled light of the forest, but it also strips away entirely the right to make a mistake. If a lioness fails in her hunt, the pride is there to back her up. If the leopard makes a single misstep, its stomach stays empty, and the consequences grow far more severe. If it is injured, no one brings it food. It must face scarcity in complete isolation. It is precisely this pressure to survive that shapes its masterful technique for transporting prey. The leopard possesses genuinely extraordinary muscular strength. Using powerful jaws, it hauls carcasses twice its own body weight directly up into the highest reaches of the trees. A fortress built in the heights where the feast remains safe from prowling hyenas and persistent lions. The only exception to the rule of solitude comes during mating season. When hormones set the course, solitary individuals briefly converge. But the encounter is fleeting, lasting barely 3 days. The moment the biological cycle is complete, distance returns immediately. The male withdraws to his territory without a moment's hesitation, leaving the female with the full weight of motherhood entirely on her own. The only social bond that endures is the maternal one. The females are remarkable mothers, raising their cubs completely alone for 2 full years. But when the young reach maturity, the mother separates from them with unyielding firmness. The young males are forced to set out on a demanding journey to carve their own destiny beneath the open sky. The cheetah, by contrast, is lightning under the bright light of day. These cats hold the absolute speed record on land. a biological machine refined to the extreme, capable of reaching 112 kilometers per hour. Yet behind those overwhelming bursts of speed lies a social structure riddled with paradox between the sexes. The world of the cheetah divides into two completely opposing halves. Females surrender entirely to the solitary life. The moment they leave their mother's protection, sisters part ways permanently. Unlike the leopard, they hold no fixed territory, instead becoming the nomads of the savannah. Their activity range stretches across more than 15 square kilometers. These females trail the herds of antelope through their seasonal migrations. Wandering alone across an endless ocean of grass, they carry on their shoulders the most demanding burden of motherhood on the planet. The males, by contrast, reject solitude outright. Blood brothers bind themselves together through a lifelong pact known as the coalition. A group of 2 or 3 becomes a genuinely formidable force. Together, they defend territory, drive off rivals, and secure access to females. But not every male has the fortune of brothers at his side. Roughly 40% of males are forced into a life of solitary exile. Without allies to rely on, they cannot establish